There's something on your mind. Maybe it's been there for days. You've thought it through. You've considered the worst case. You've told yourself it'll probably be fine. Then it comes back. Not dramatically, just quietly returning to the front of your attention when you least expect it. In the middle of a conversation, right before you fall asleep, in the small spaces between tasks where your mind has a moment to itself. And you wonder, not for the first time, why you can't just stop. Worrying is exhausting in a particular way. Not the exhaustion of physical effort, but the exhaustion of sustained alertness. The body holds tension it doesn't need. The mind runs scenarios it has already run before. Sleep becomes lighter. Concentration becomes harder. Small things feel heavier than they should. And underneath all of it is a frustration with yourself, because you know the worry isn't helping. You know it isn't solving anything. And yet, it continues. Worry is not a malfunction. It's the brain performing one of its most fundamental functions: threat detection. The mind is designed to anticipate danger, to model possible futures, to identify problems before they arrive so that something can be done about them. In that sense, worry is the brain doing exactly what it evolved to do: scanning the horizon, looking for what might go wrong, preparing for what hasn't happened yet. The problem is not the scanning itself. The problem is when the scan never finds a reason to stop. When the brain perceives a threat, real or imagined, the amygdala activates. Stress hormones are released, and the body prepares for action. Heart rate increases slightly, muscles tighten, attention narrows. This is the fight or flight response, one of the oldest systems in the human brain. It was designed for immediate physical threats: a predator, a sudden danger, something that required fast action and then resolution. But modern worry rarely works that way. The threat is abstract. The timeline is uncertain. The action required is unclear. So the system activates and has nowhere to go. The alarm sounds, but there's nothing to run from. Worry loops because the brain is waiting for a resolution that abstract threats cannot provide. Physical danger resolves. You escape or you don't. Either way, the situation ends. But worrying about a difficult conversation that hasn't happened yet, or a result that you're waiting on, or a relationship that feels uncertain, these don't resolve through thinking. The brain keeps returning to them because they remain open, unresolved, still potentially dangerous. And an open threat to the brain is a threat that still requires attention. Here's a reframe worth considering. Worry is often misplaced preparation. The intention behind it is not irrational. The mind wants to be ready. It wants to have considered the possibilities. It wants to feel less vulnerable to what might come next. That impulse is not the problem. The problem is that worry does the preparation work without producing anything usable. It rehearses the scenario without creating a plan. It identifies the risk without taking any action. It uses the energy of preparation without the output. There's a meaningful distinction between worrying and planning. Worrying circles the problem, and planning engages it. Worrying asks, what if this goes wrong? Planning asks, if this goes wrong, what would I do? The first question has no answer that satisfies. The second produces something concrete. The shift from worry to planning is not about positive thinking. It's about giving the brain a task it can actually complete. a specific question, a defined action, something to do with the energy the threat response has generated. Underneath most chronic worry is something the mind values deeply. Worry and care are not as different as they seem. We worry most about the things that matter most to us: health, relationships, the people we love, the work we've invested in. In that sense, worry is not evidence of weakness. It's evidence of investment, of having something worth protecting, of caring enough about an outcome that the mind refuses to leave it unguarded. The goal is not to eliminate worry entirely. That is neither realistic nor necessary. The goal is to carry it differently, to recognize when the brain is doing its job, scanning for threat, preparing for difficulty, and to respond to that signal with something more useful than more worry. Acknowledgement, a concrete next step, a deliberate return of attention to what is actually present, rather than what might be. Not because the worry is wrong, but because it has already delivered its message, and the message has been received. You can't think your way to a worry-free life. The brain will always find something worth being cautious about. That's part of what it means to be alive and to care. But worry does not have to be the loudest thing in the room. It can be heard, acknowledged, and then gently set aside. Not because the concern isn't real, but because you have already listened, and listening was all it needed.